After years of grueling debates and late-night votes in Congress, I, Congressman James Montgomery, never anticipated that my most significant battle wouldn't be in the hallowed halls of the Capitol, but in my own quiet, suburban backyard. It all started with Max, my golden retriever service dog, a loyal companion who had seen me through the darkest days of PTSD after my return from overseas. It all began after I moved into what I thought was my dream home, nestled in the seemingly idyllic community of Oakhaven Estates. A beautiful house, the perfect little garden, where my battle buddy Max, my service dog, a noble golden retriever, could finally have the space to play freely. He'd saved my life countless times during my darkest moments, his warm presence a comforting weight against the chilling memories. If only I'd known that the carefully tended garden, my little patch of peace, would become a battlefield. The first week was deceptively tranquil. I kept to myself, a silent figure working remotely on housing bills that flew under the radar of public scrutiny. That was my preference, to be just another homeowner, a quiet presence trying to live a peaceful life. Max, ever vigilant, helped me navigate the treacherous waters of my PTSD, his gentle presence a steadfast anchor, keeping the haunting memories at bay. I served in Congress, not as a boisterous figurehead, but as a quiet force, working diligently behind the scenes. My neighbors, with their friendly smiles and casual waves, likely assumed I was just another work-from-home professional, blissfully unaware of the battles I fought both internally and on Capitol Hill. Then came the first ominous sign, a stark pink piece of paper, practically vibrating with animosity, adhered to my door with such force that the writing had torn through in places. Unauthorized pet, violation of HOA codes. My initial reaction was a chuckle. They clearly hadn't done their homework, hadn't bothered to familiarize themselves with the intricacies of service animal laws. I reached for my phone, intending to document this absurd accusation, when I heard her voice for the first time. "You must be the new neighbor, the one flagrantly disregarding our community rules." The woman marching across my meticulously maintained lawn with the determined stride of a seasoned general had that look. Perfectly coiffed, blonde hair, a designer yoga outfit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, and a face twisted with the kind of entitled arrogance that only vast sums of money can seemingly buy. "I'm Catherine HOA Community Standards Committee Chair," she announced, as if she were proclaiming herself Queen of the Realm. Years of navigating contentious congressional debates came to my aid. I kept my voice calm, measured. "Nice to meet you, Catherine. I'm James, and this is Max, my service dog." I reached for Max's meticulously organized documentation, the proof of his vital role in my life. But she was already shaking her head, her perfectly sculpted features set in a mask of disapproval. "We don't allow large dogs here. They're detrimental to property values. Brenda, our esteemed HOA president, has very specific, stringent guidelines about this." Catherine's eyes, sharp and assessing, narrowed at Max, who sat perfectly still, a picture of canine obedience beside me. "And frankly," she added with a sneer, "you don't look disabled." My hand tightened on Max's leash, the leather a familiar comfort. "Not all wounds are visible, Catherine." I was tempted. I was desperately tempted to tell her. I wanted to scream it from the rooftops. Instead, I plastered on a polite, practiced smile. "I understand your concern, but service animals are explicitly protected under federal law. I have all the proper documentation, meticulously organized and readily available." With the practiced efficiency of a seasoned operative, she whipped out her phone, snapping pictures of my house, my garden, our sanctuary, and, most importantly, Max. "We'll see about that, Mr. Montgomery. This isn't over." Catherine stormed off, her expensive designer sneakers leaving tiny, infuriating indentations in my freshly watered lawn. That night, sleep evaded me. Max, ever perceptive, sensed my simmering anxiety, staying closer than usual, his warm body a comforting presence. I'd faced down hostile foreign governments, argued contentious bills on the House floor, but something about Catherine's veiled threat felt different, deeply personal, a violation. While Max dozed peacefully beside my desk, I pulled up Oakhaven Estate's HOA regulations, meticulously scanning every line, every clause, for any mention of service animals. Nothing. They hadn't even considered it, hadn't bothered to acknowledge the existence of laws designed to protect individuals like myself. The following morning, I awoke to a fresh outrage. My meticulously crafted garden fence, the border of my little sanctuary, was defaced. The word violation spray-painted in garish bright red. My security camera footage, my silent, ever-vigilant witness, revealed Catherine directing someone to commit this act of vandalism at 6 a.m., the pre-dawn darkness doing little to conceal her malicious intent. The paint was still wet when I touched it, a sticky, viscous reminder of their blatant disregard. And Max, my loyal companion, unknowingly tracked the crimson paint across the sidewalk with his paws, exactly the kind of visual they craved. I was in the midst of drafting a scathing email to the HOA board, my fingers flying across the keyboard, when another knock echoed through the house. This time, it was Brenda herself, the HOA president, clutching a thick, intimidating folder bulging with what I could only assume were fabricated complaints. She barely glanced at me, her gaze fixated on Max with unconcealed disgust. "Mr. Montgomery," she began, her voice dripping with a saccharine sympathy that set my teeth on edge, "we pride ourselves on maintaining certain standards here. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in another neighborhood, one less discerning?" I felt Max press against my leg, his solid presence grounding me, just as he always did during my anxiety attacks, those terrifying plunges into the past. That's when I saw Catherine lurking in the background, her phone held aloft, filming everything, probably salivating at the prospect of me losing my temper, providing them with the ammunition they so desperately craved. They had no idea who they were dealing with, no inkling of the laws they were so casually, so arrogantly breaking. But for now, I needed to play this strategically to bide my time. "Thank you for your concern, Brenda. I'll review these complaints carefully," I replied, accepting the folder with my best congressional poker face, the same one I'd perfected during countless intense committee hearings. "By the way," I added, as a carefully calculated afterthought, "does the HOA have insurance to cover potential federal housing law violations?" Her practiced smile faltered just for a fleeting second, a hairline crack in her carefully constructed facade. Behind her, Catherine abruptly stopped filming. Neither of them knew it yet, but they had just ignited a war they couldn't possibly win. As I closed the door, I could hear their frantic whispers, a symphony of panic. Max looked up at me with those knowing, soulful eyes, and I scratched behind his ears, a gesture of reassurance. "Don't worry, buddy," I murmured, my voice thick with a newfound resolve. "They have absolutely no idea what's coming." That night, more neighbors reported mysterious, conveniently timed property damage to the HOA, all homes located in my immediate vicinity. Through my window, I watched Catherine lead Brenda around, theatrically pointing at houses, meticulously documenting the supposed damage with her ever-present phone. My security cameras, my silent sentinels, captured every detail. The pieces were falling into place, a carefully constructed puzzle of deceit. But I had a sinking feeling, a cold dread, in the pit of my stomach that this was just the beginning, the opening salvo in a much larger, much more dangerous game. What they would do next would change everything, not just for me and Max, but for thousands of homeowners across America. I woke up to the jarring sound of a camera clicking, a mechanical intrusion into the quiet morning. There was Catherine Martin, in her signature pink jogging suit, snapping pictures of my front yard at the ungodly hour of 6:30 in the morning. Max's ears perked up, a low, guttural growl rumbling in his throat, a sound I rarely heard. "Gotta document all the dog poop, Mr. Montgomery. It's absolutely ruining our property values," she yelled when she saw me, her voice shrill and piercing. I hadn't even had my morning coffee yet, my mind still foggy with sleep. Max, with his impeccable service dog training that had cost me 2 years and a staggering $30,000 after my last deployment, never left messes. I knew this with absolute certainty. I grabbed my phone, my own weapon of choice, and started recording her blatant trespassing. Catherine's face turned an alarming shade of crimson. "You can't film me. This is harassment," she shrieked, stamping her foot like a petulant child. The irony, the sheer hypocrisy of her statement was completely lost on her. Later that morning, I found printed flyers stuffed into everyone's mailbox, crude propaganda warning of dangerous animals in the neighborhood, featuring a grainy, distorted photo of Max peacefully sleeping in my front yard. Catherine, in her infinite wisdom, had drawn thick red circles around his massive fangs, which, upon closer inspection, was simply the result of Max yawning. I carefully preserved one of the flyers, adding it to my ever-growing file of HOA harassment, a meticulous record of their escalating attacks. My security cameras, my ever-watchful eyes, captured her sending her teenage son Tommy to plant fake dog waste in my yard that afternoon. The poor kid looked utterly mortified, mouthing a silent "sorry" to my front door camera. I didn't blame him. He was clearly caught in the crossfire of his mother's obsessive vendetta. Catherine was the type of mother who would ground him for a month for refusing to participate in her twisted games. The real trouble, the escalation that sent chills down my spine, began during my evening walk with Max. We passed the community garden, a vibrant patch of green that I'd helped plant last spring, a symbol of unity and shared effort. Catherine was there with Brenda, the HOA president, pointing dramatically at my tomato plants, their faces contorted in expressions of disdain. "They're not regulation height," Catherine insisted, waving a ruler around like a weapon. "And who knows what diseases that dog could be spreading to our precious vegetables." I stopped, my hand instinctively going to Max's head, a gesture of reassurance and protection. I pulled out my phone and played them the recording from our last HOA meeting, the meeting where they had specifically approved my garden plans, their own words echoing back at them. Catherine's face went through a spectrum of colors, finally settling on a furious shade of purple. "You're not allowed to record meetings," she screeched, her voice reaching a new, ear-splitting pitch. "Actually," I replied, my voice calm and steady, the voice of a seasoned legislator, I meticulously checked state laws before moving here. One-party consent, Catherine." That night, a strange, acrid smell permeated the air while I was making dinner. Max, ever alert, started barking frantically at the window, his instincts honed by years of service. I rushed outside, my heart pounding in my chest, to find my entire garden wilting, the leaves drooping, the vibrant colors fading. Someone had doused it with industrial-strength weed killer, a chemical weapon unleashed upon my little patch of green. The tomato plants, the ones I'd lovingly grown for our community food bank, were dying before my eyes, a senseless act of destruction. The cameras, my faithful witnesses, caught Catherine's husband, Mike, doing the deed, skulking around in a black hoodie like some cartoon burglar, a pathetic attempt at disguise. I called the police, my hands shaking with a mixture of fury and despair, to file a report. Officer Miller, thankfully no relation to Catherine, took photos, meticulously documenting the damage, the chemical evidence of their malicious intent. "You know," she said quietly, her voice tinged with a knowing weariness, "we've had 7 complaints about this HOA in the past month alone." She handed me her card, a small gesture of solidarity, a silent acknowledgement of the battle I was facing. I added it to my growing file, a testament to their escalating campaign of harassment. The next morning, Catherine had orchestrated an emergency HOA meeting. A kangaroo court convened to discuss the ever-so-important issue of property values. I watched through my window as neighbors filed into her house, some looking uncomfortable, others eager for the drama, the spectacle. Mrs. Jackson, my elderly neighbor, who had always been kind to Max, caught my eye and slowly shook her head as she walked past, a silent warning. She slipped a note into my mailbox later, a crumpled piece of paper bearing a chilling message. "They're planning something big. Be careful." I sent clips from my security cameras to my old friend at the local news station, a seasoned investigative journalist, not for publication, not yet, but as insurance, a safeguard against their escalating attacks. Then I sat down at my desk, my sanctuary of work and reflection, pulled out my official congressional letterhead, and began drafting a letter, a formal complaint about discriminatory housing practices. My hands shook slightly as I typed, the weight of the situation pressing down on me, but Max, ever faithful, pressed his head against my leg, grounding me, anchoring me to the present, just as he always did. That's when I heard the first rock hit my window, a sharp, jarring sound that shattered the fragile peace. I looked outside to see Tommy, Catherine's son, with tears streaming down his face, his mother's hand gripping his shoulder tightly, forcing him to throw another. Other neighbors watched from their driveways, their phones raised, recording the scene, the unfolding drama. But no one dared to intervene, to stop her, to stand up to the bully. As the second rock shattered my living room window, sending shards of glass scattering across the floor, I reached for my phone, my lifeline. Little did Catherine know, but tomorrow's HOA meeting would have an unexpected guest, a force they couldn't possibly anticipate. And this time, I wasn't coming as just another homeowner, another victim of their petty tyranny. But watching Max, my loyal companion, shake under my desk, traumatized by the violence, the escalating aggression, I wondered if I'd waited too long, if I'd allowed their harassment to go unchecked for far too long. Had I waited too long to reveal who I really was, the power I held, the resources at my disposal? I walked into the HOA meeting room, my heart pounding a heavy rhythm against my ribs, a counterpoint to the silent, watchful presence of Max, who quietly guided me to an empty chair. The room fell silent, a hushed expectancy hanging in the air, broken only by Catherine's loud, stage-whispered, "He's breaking the rules again by bringing that dog in here." I took a deep, calming breath, drawing on years of training, countless hours spent navigating the treacherous waters of heated debates in Washington. This wasn't my first fight, not by a long shot, but it was undeniably my most personal, the one that cut closest to the bone. Brenda stood at the podium, her perfectly styled grey hair and crisply pressed blazer mirroring her rigid, unyielding personality. She offered that same, infuriatingly fake smile I'd seen too many times, the one that masked a core of steel. "As we begin tonight's meeting," she announced, her voice smooth and practiced, "we have an urgent matter to discuss, a matter of grave concern regarding unauthorized pets and their detrimental impact on our meticulously maintained property values." I felt every eye in the room. A collective weight of judgment turned to me and Max. A few neighbors, those with a shred of decency remaining, quickly looked away, shame etched on their faces. They knew what was coming, the carefully orchestrated charade, but were too afraid, too intimidated to stand up to the HOA board, to the reign of terror that Catherine and Brenda had imposed. I gently patted Max's head, drawing strength from his calm, unwavering presence, a silent reassurance in the face of the impending storm. Catherine Martin, ever the drama queen, shot up from her seat, waving a thick stack of papers like a battle flag. "I have irrefutable, documented evidence of this dog urinating on my prize-winning roses. My children can't even play in our yard anymore because of their severe, life-threatening allergies." I had to physically restrain myself from laughing. Her children were at the community pool just yesterday, frolicking and splashing with the Watson's Labrador, exhibiting absolutely no signs of allergic distress. It was a blatant, transparent lie, a desperate attempt to paint Max as a menace. I stood slowly, deliberately, pulling out Max's meticulously organized service animal certification and a copy of the Fair Housing Act, my weapons in this carefully orchestrated battle. "Max is a registered service animal, Catherine, and under federal law," Catherine's shrill, piercing voice cut me off, a wave of sound designed to drown out reason. "We don't care about your supposed federal laws. This is a private community. We make our own rules." Her face was rapidly turning a vibrant shade of red as she advanced towards me, pointing her finger like an accusatory weapon. "My property values have plummeted a staggering 15% since you moved in with that mutt." The room erupted in chaos, a cacophony of shouting and accusations. Some residents, fueled by Catherine's rhetoric, started yelling about their own perceived property value declines, while others, a brave few, attempted to defend me, their voices barely audible above the din. Through the noise, the swirling vortex of anger and resentment, I noticed Tom, Brenda's husband, filming everything on his phone, a subtle smirk playing on his lips. I'd later learn the significance of that smirk, the way it would ultimately contribute to their downfall. "If I may," I said calmly, my voice cutting through the noise like a sharp knife, the practiced tone I'd honed on the house floor, a voice designed to command attention. "I have taken the liberty of pulling our neighborhood's property records, a matter of public record, easily accessible." I opened my laptop, connecting it to the projector, the screen illuminating the room with undeniable data. Actually, property values have increased by a solid 12% since I moved in. The only decrease was after Catherine's unauthorized pool installation. A blatant violation of HOA codes cracked her neighbor's foundation. The room went deathly silent, the air thick with stunned disbelief. Catherine's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, her carefully constructed narrative collapsing around her. But I wasn't finished. I had more ammunition, more carefully gathered evidence. I also have satellite images, irrefutable proof, showing that Brenda's new fence, the one she so proudly erected, extends a full 3 feet onto public land, which is precisely why I've been receiving those ridiculous citations about Max being off-leash in what is, in fact, a public space. Brenda's face went ashen, her carefully crafted composure crumbling. "This meeting is adjourned," she announced abruptly, gathering her papers with trembling hands, a desperate attempt to regain control. But the damage was done. The cracks in their facade had widened into gaping chasms. Other residents, emboldened by my revelations, started raising their hands, their voices hesitant at first, then growing stronger, wanting to share their own stories of harassment, of unfair treatment, of the petty tyranny they'd endured under Catherine and Brenda's rule. That's when Catherine, her carefully constructed world imploding around her, completely lost it. She marched up to Max, who sat perfectly still, a model of canine composure despite her aggressive approach. "This dog is dangerous. Look at how it's growling at me," she shrieked, her voice laced with hysteria. Max wasn't making a sound, a fact that was obvious to everyone in the room. He was the picture of calm, controlled obedience. "He tried to attack my precious Bella just yesterday," she continued, her lies escalating with each breath. I pulled out my phone, my ever-present weapon of truth, playing a security camera clip from my front yard, a clear, undeniable record of the event. "You mean when your unleashed Chihuahua, a tiny yapping creature, charged at us while Max calmly, professionally guided me away, protecting me as he's trained to do?" The video played clearly for everyone to see, the truth laid bare for all to witness. Several neighbors gasped, their eyes widening in disbelief. Brenda banged her gavel desperately, a futile attempt to restore order. "This is unauthorized recording, you can't." "Actually," I said, my voice steady and unwavering, "the HOA bylaws only prohibit recording of private residences. Common areas, Brenda, are fair game." Years of meticulously reading legislative fine print, of poring over legal documents, had finally, gloriously, paid off. As the meeting dissolved into utter chaos, a maelstrom of accusations and recriminations, I noticed Tom slip out a side door, his phone in hand, his fingers flying across the screen as he frantically texted someone. Max's ears perked up, a subtle shift in his posture, sensing something I, in my focus on the unfolding drama, couldn't. If only I'd paid more attention to that detail, that subtle warning sign, maybe I could have prevented the tragedy that was about to unfold. Catherine stormed out, yelling over her shoulder, her voice cracking with rage and desperation. "This isn't over. You'll regret ever moving into my neighborhood." Her words sent a chill down my spine, not because I was afraid, but because I knew that people like Catherine and Brenda were exactly why I dedicated my career to fighting for housing reform, for protecting the vulnerable from the abuses of power. They just didn't know, not yet, who they were really dealing with. As Max and I walked home under the fading light of the setting sun, I noticed several neighbors, those who had been too intimidated to speak out before, quietly taking down their "No Pets Allowed" signs. Small victories, I thought, fleeting moments of triumph, but something in the air felt different, charged with a dangerous energy. Max, usually relaxed and at ease after our evening walk, was tense, alert, his senses on high alert. He could sense what I was only beginning to realize. This wasn't just about a service dog anymore. This was about power, about control, and about what happens when someone finally stands up to bullies, when the victims refuse to be silenced. I had no idea, no premonition, that tomorrow morning would change everything, irrevocably altering the course of my life and the lives of everyone in Oak Haven Estates. I woke up early that Sunday morning to the cheerful sound of birds chirping, a deceptively peaceful soundtrack to the impending storm. Max's gentle nudge against my hand, a familiar, comforting ritual, told me it was time for our morning routine. The sun was barely peeking through the clouds, casting long, ethereal shadows, and the grass was still wet with dew, a perfect morning for Max's training exercises. As I stepped into my backyard, my little patch of sanctuary, something felt off, subtly wrong. The usual peace, the tranquility of our morning ritual, was broken by hushed whispers coming from Catherine's yard, a discordant note in the otherwise serene morning. I tried to ignore it, to dismiss it as the usual paranoia, the constant spying we'd grown accustomed to. Max, ever focused, stayed diligently on his tasks, just as he was trained to do, his golden fur catching the nascent sunlight as he helped me maintain my balance, a daily, unwavering reminder of why he was so much more than just a pet. I heard Catherine's back door slam, a sharp, abrupt sound that cut through the quiet morning. "You're filming this, right, Tommy?" Her shrill voice carried over the fence, a clear indication of her malicious intent. "We need evidence of this nuisance." I took a deep breath, steeling myself, choosing to focus on Max, on his unwavering loyalty, his steadfast presence. We'd already filed 3 police reports about their relentless harassment, and my lawyer was building a solid, airtight case. Max's ears suddenly perked up, a subtle but significant movement. He shifted his body slightly, positioning himself between me and the fence, a protective gesture he only employed when he sensed imminent danger, a threat to my well-being. I heard footsteps crunching on leaves, a deliberate, measured pace moving along the property line, the very area where Catherine had been so vociferously complaining about my unauthorized garden bed. "Hey, your mutt is threatening my wife!" Tom's voice boomed from behind the fence, a voice filled with manufactured outrage, a blatant attempt at provocation. I turned slowly, keeping my voice steady, controlled, the voice I'd perfected during countless tense congressional negotiations. "Max is a trained service animal, Tom. He's not threatening anyone." Catherine's face appeared above the fence, her eyes narrowed, her phone pointed at us like a weapon. "We've warned you about this dangerous animal. Property values are plummeting because of you." Her voice cracked with that same entitled anger, that same unshakable belief in her own superiority that I'd heard at every HOA meeting, a constant, grating refrain. I reached for my own phone, ready to record whatever false, fabricated claims they were about to make, ready to document their escalating aggression. That's when I saw Tom emerge from behind his garage, holding something that made my blood run cold, something that sent a jolt of icy fear through my veins. The morning sun glinted ominously off the cold, hard metal of his home security weapon, a stark contrast to the peaceful surroundings. "Tom," I said calmly, raising my hands in a gesture of appeasement, my voice betraying none of the terror that was gripping my heart. "Think very carefully about what you're doing. Think about the consequences." Max stayed perfectly still, his training overriding every instinct, his focus unwavering. He was doing exactly what he was supposed to do, keeping me safe, remaining calm in the face of escalating danger. "I'm the head of neighborhood security, Congressman," Tom shouted, his face flushed crimson with manufactured rage fueled by his wife's relentless goading. "And I'm protecting our community." Catherine was still filming, her smile growing wider, more triumphant with each passing second, a grotesque display of satisfaction. Everything happened so fast after that, a blur of motion and sound. A neighbor's car backfired in the distance, a sharp, explosive sound that echoed through the quiet morning. Catherine screamed something about attacking, her voice shrill and piercing. Tom's finger, tightened on the trigger, a subtle but deadly movement. I lunged for Max, a desperate attempt to shield him, to protect him from the impending danger, but I was too slow, too late. The shot echoed through the quiet morning like a crack of thunder, a deafening explosion that shattered the fragile peace. Max's yelp of pain, a sharp, heart-wrenching cry, shattered my world into a million jagged pieces. My brave, loyal, gentle partner collapsed onto our freshly cut grass, his beautiful golden fur staining a horrifying crimson, the color of blood, of violence, of betrayal. "Self-defense!" Catherine shrieked, still filming, her voice a mixture of triumph and panic. "We all saw it. The dog was aggressive." But her voice faltered, her carefully constructed facade crumbling as other neighbors, drawn by the commotion, began emerging from their homes, their phones raised, capturing the truth, the undeniable reality of what had just happened. I cradled Max's head in my lap, my hands trembling, my training, my years of experience, kicking in, keeping me clear-headed enough to apply pressure to his wound to try to stem the flow of blood. His brown eyes, those soulful, trusting eyes, looked up at me, full of unwavering love, even now, even in the face of such unimaginable pain. Sirens wailed in the distance. A growing chorus of urgency. Someone had called 911. Someone had witnessed the horror. My hands shook violently as I pulled out my phone, pressing the emergency contact I'd hoped I'd never need. The direct line to my chief of staff. "Sarah," I said, my voice barely a whisper, choked with emotion. "It's James. They shot him, Sarah. They actually shot my dog." "Sir," she replied, her voice urgent, sharp, cutting through the fog of my shock. "You need to turn on the news right now. Someone posted a video of the shooting on social media. It's everywhere. It's gone viral." I pulled out my tablet, my fingers fumbling with the screen, and clicked the first news link she sent. There it was, the horrifying truth, displayed for the world to see. Shaky phone footage from my neighbor's second-story window, capturing everything. Tom with his gun, Catherine screaming about property values, and Max's heart-wrenching yelp, the sound that would forever haunt my nightmares. The video had over 1 million views already, a testament to the power of social media, the instantaneous spread of information. The emergency room doors burst open, and Brenda stormed in, her designer handbag swinging wildly as she waved her phone in my face, her perfectly made-up face now pale, her mascara slightly smeared, a picture of unraveling composure. "You're him! You're actually him!" she stammered, her voice a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. "You're Congressman Montgomery!" I stood up slowly, drawing myself to my full height. The years of keeping my identity private, of living a quiet, unassuming life in their community, crumbling around me. "Yes, Brenda," I said, my voice cold and hard, devoid of any warmth. "I am. And you and your husband just shot a congressionally protected service animal, and it was all caught on video, broadcast for the world to see." She stumbled backward, nearly knocking over a chair, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. But you never said anything. You let us think you were just another homeowner, another ordinary resident." "I wanted to live quietly, Brenda," I replied, my voice laced with a bitter irony. "To work on my housing reform bill, to make a difference without drawing unnecessary attention. I chose your community, Oak Haven Estates, because the listing promised peaceful living, a tranquil environment. Instead, you, your husband, and Catherine harassed a disabled veteran and his service animal for months, relentlessly, cruelly, all because of your obsession with superficial appearances and inflated property values." Catherine burst through the doors next, her face a mask of conflicting emotions, anger, fear, and a dawning realization of the magnitude of their actions. "This is a trick," she shrieked, her voice cracking with desperation. "He's lying. It's all a conspiracy." But her voice lacked its usual conviction, faltering when she saw the news playing silently on the waiting room TV, my official congressional photo displayed next to the horrifying footage of the shooting. My phone buzzed again, a relentless barrage of messages flooding in, from other members of Congress, from the media, from veteran groups, from disability advocates, from ordinary citizens, outraged by what they had witnessed. Justice for Max was trending nationwide, a testament to the power of public outrage. The young vet tech who'd taken Max back, her scrubs stained with his blood, a stark reminder of the violence he'd endured, appeared, her face etched with concern. I rushed to her, my heart pounding in my chest, a desperate plea for good news. Brenda and Catherine fell silent, their bravado evaporating, probably realizing finally just how much trouble they were in, the magnitude of the consequences they faced. "He's stable," the vet tech said softly, her voice a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. "The bullet missed his vital organs, miraculously, but he'll need surgery, extensive surgery. Dr. Peterson wants to talk to you about the procedure, the risks, the recovery." Relief flooded through me, a wave of gratitude washing over me, but it was quickly followed by a surge of anger, a burning fury directed at the people who had caused this, who had inflicted this pain on my loyal companion. I turned to Brenda and Catherine, who were now huddled together near the exit, their faces pale, their carefully constructed facades shattered. "I've spent the last year working tirelessly on housing reform legislation," I said, my voice low and controlled but laced with steel. "But now I'm adding specific provisions, very specific provisions about service animals and HOA oversight, holding them accountable for their actions. Your actions, your cruelty, just became Exhibit A in congressional hearings. Your blatant disregard for the law, for basic human decency, will now be used to enact real, lasting change." Catherine's face crumpled, her carefully maintained composure dissolving into tears. "But our property values, our community standards," she wailed, her voice a desperate plea. "Your property values?" I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Check your real estate apps, Catherine. News travels fast, especially in the digital age. Houses in Oakhaven Estates are already being listed below market value. Turns out, shooting a congressman's service dog, a beloved companion, isn't exactly great for the neighborhood's reputation, is it?" Brenda grabbed her phone, frantically scrolling through Zillow, her gasp a sharp intake of breath, telling me she'd seen the plummeting prices, the devastating impact of their actions on their precious community. "We can fix this," she pleaded, her voice trembling, her eyes wide with desperation. "We'll drop all the complaints, every single one. We'll pay all of Max's vet bills, every penny. Just please make this go away." "It's too late," I said, pulling out a folder from my briefcase, a meticulously compiled dossier of their transgressions. "This," I said, holding up the folder, "is what justice looks like." Inside were copies of every harassing letter they'd sent, every fabricated complaint, photos of my vandalized garden, recordings of their discriminatory HOA meetings, a mountain of evidence documenting their relentless campaign of harassment. "The FBI is already investigating. Service animal interference, you see, is a federal crime, Brenda. A serious offense." The vet tech returned, her expression serious but calm. "Sir, Dr. Peterson is prepped and ready for you whenever you are." I gathered my things, preparing to go back and see Max, my loyal companion, the one who had endured so much. I watched Brenda sink into a chair, her face buried in her hands, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Catherine was still frozen, staring blankly at her phone. As angry comments, a torrent of outrage, flooded the HOA's social media pages, a digital testament to their downfall. As I walked through the doors to see Max, to be with him during this critical time, I heard Brenda whisper, her voice barely audible, "What have we done?" My hand rested on the door handle, a cold, metallic touch, and I looked back one last time, my gaze lingering on the two women who had caused so much pain, so much suffering. "You tried to destroy my life, to hurt my dog, because you thought I was powerless, insignificant, just another homeowner you could bully and intimidate. Now, I said, my voice resonating with a newfound strength, you get to learn what real power looks like. The power of the law you so casually, so arrogantly disregarded. The next few hours would be a blur of activity, a whirlwind of decisions and updates. But right now, at this very moment, all that mattered was Max, my faithful companion, my battle buddy. As I stepped through those doors, into the sterile, antiseptic environment of the veterinary clinic, I couldn't help but wonder, would saving him, would achieving justice for him, cost me everything I'd worked for in Congress? Or would this become the defining moment of my career, the catalyst for real, lasting change? The morning news vans, a pack of hungry wolves, lined our once quiet, serene street like vultures, their cameras poised, their reporters eager for a soundbite, a glimpse of the unfolding drama. I watched from my window as Catherine Martin paced her front lawn, her perfectly toned legs clad in her designer yoga pants, desperately trying to shoo away the relentless reporters while clutching her phone to her ear, a picture of frantic desperation. The look of panic on her face, the stark contrast to her usual smug, entitled expression, was a small, bitter satisfaction. Max's blood, a stark reminder of their cruelty, hadn't even dried on my back patio, and already their perfect, meticulously crafted world was crumbling, disintegrating around them. My phone buzzed again. Another text message from Sarah, my ever-vigilant chief of staff. The story had reached national headlines, dominating the news cycle. Congressman's service dog shot by HOA board member. Social media was exploding with fury, a digital firestorm of outrage and condemnation. I clicked through Twitter, watching the security camera footage I'd released, the footage that laid bare their cruelty, go viral. The clear audio of Catherine screaming about property values just seconds before Tom fired the shot, a damning indictment, was playing on repeat, a testament to their callous disregard for the law, for basic human decency. No amount of spin, no carefully crafted PR campaign could save them now. A knock at my door, a hesitant rap, made Max whimper from his bed, his bandaged side a constant painful reminder of what they'd done, the violence they'd inflicted. Through the peephole, I saw Brenda, her usual perfectly styled hair, now disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy, a picture of utter despair. I opened the door just enough to hear her stammered plea, her voice choked with emotion. "Congressman Montgomery, please, we can work something out. We didn't know who you were." Catherine, she was just trying to protect our community standards. Tom made a terrible mistake, a terrible, terrible mistake. What will it take? What will it take to keep this quiet? I felt a cold smile spread across my face, a mirthless expression devoid of any warmth. Protect community standards? Let me show you something, Brenda. I pulled out my tablet, opening the file my team had painstakingly compiled, a digital archive of their transgressions. Here's every HOA violation notice issued in Oak Haven Estates for the past 5 years, a comprehensive record of your community standards. Notice anything strange, Bergoot, about who received them, Brenda? Her face went even paler, if that was possible, as I scrolled through the data, the undeniable evidence of their systematic discrimination. Every single complaint about pets, about yard maintenance, about community standards, had been filed against minorities, against disabled residents, against elderly homeowners on fixed incomes. The pattern was impossible to ignore, a blatant display of prejudice and abuse of power. "This isn't just about Max anymore, Brenda," I said quietly, my voice devoid of any emotion. "While you were busy harassing my service dog, My office was investigating HOA abuse across the country, a systemic problem that has gone unchecked for far too long. Oakhaven Estates, your precious, perfect community, just became Exhibit A, the poster child for everything that's wrong with unchecked HOA power. A commotion down the street, a sudden surge of noise, caught our attention. Catherine was now screaming at a reporter who had dared to step onto her meticulously manicured lawn, her voice shrill and desperate. "You don't understand. Property values are everything. We can't have dogs running around. It attracts the wrong kind of people." The reporter's camera, a silent, impartial witness, captured every word, every desperate, bigoted utterance. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. My phone buzzed again. Another notification, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. The housing reform bill I'd been quietly, diligently working on for months. The bill that had languished in committee, facing an uphill battle, was suddenly gaining massive bipartisan support. Colleagues who'd been on the fence, hesitant to take a stand, were now calling to co-sponsor, eager to be associated with the cause. Funny, I thought, how a viral video of HOA abuse, of a congressman's service dog being shot in cold blood, could change political winds, could shift the balance of power. Brenda was still standing there, trembling, her body racked with sobs. What do you want from us?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I handed her a thick envelope, a weighty document that held their fate in its pages. "Here's your chance to do the right thing, Brenda. A small chance." Inside was my proposal, a meticulously crafted plan for a complete overhaul of Oakhaven Estates governance. New board elections, immediate and transparent, third-party oversight, mandatory civil rights training for all board members, a complete dismantling of their carefully constructed system of power and control. Sign it, Brenda. Sign it now, or I'll add your blatant, documented discrimination data to my congressional testimony next week. Your choice." She snatched the envelope, her hands shaking so badly she could barely open it, her fingers fumbling with the pages. Behind her, I saw Tom being led out of his house in handcuffs, his face ashen, his eyes filled with a dawning realization of the consequences of his actions. The police had finally arrived to arrest him for animal cruelty and reckless discharge of a firearm. A small measure of justice in the face of such senseless violence. Catherine was now crying into her phone, probably calling her lawyer, desperately seeking a way out of the mess she'd created. Max, my loyal companion, limped to my side, his tail wagging weakly, his unwavering trust a constant source of strength. I scratched behind his ears, remembering all the nights he'd helped me through my PTSD episodes, his gentle presence a shield against the darkness. How dare they, I thought, how dare they try to take him from me, to inflict such pain on such an innocent, loving creature. A new text message lit up my phone. Photos from a resident, a brave soul who had finally found the courage to speak out, showing years of HOA documents being shredded in Brenda's garage last night. A desperate, futile attempt to destroy the evidence, to erase their crimes. More evidence for the investigation, more fuel for the fire. The house of cards, their carefully constructed world of lies and deceit, was falling faster than they could possibly cover their tracks. Protesters started gathering at the community entrance, a growing crowd holding signs with Max's picture, demanding justice, their voices a chorus of outrage. Local news crews interviewed residents who'd been silenced by HOA threats for years, their stories finally being heard, their voices amplified by the national attention. One elderly woman wept as she described being fined into near bankruptcy for having a wheelchair ramp, a necessary accommodation for her disability. A Latino family showed documentation of being cited for cooking odors from their traditional family meals, a blatant display of cultural insensitivity and prejudice. Brenda's hand trembled as she signed the documents, each signature a reluctant admission of guilt, a surrender of power. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "My husband, he's on the city council. This will ruin us." I took the papers, checking each signature, ensuring that every detail was correct. "You should have thought of that, Brenda," I said, my voice cold and unforgiving. "Before you decided to shoot a congressman's service dog, before you engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment and discrimination." "But don't worry," I added, a hint of bitter irony in my voice. "You'll have plenty of time to think about it, to reflect on your actions." During the federal investigation, as she hurried away, her shoulders slumped in defeat, I saw Catherine being interviewed on live television, still desperately trying to defend herself, to spin the narrative, to portray herself as the victim. "I had no idea he was in Congress," she insisted, her voice shrill and unconvincing. "We just wanted to maintain our standards. Dogs. Dogs reduce property values by 15%. It's a fact." The reporter, a seasoned journalist, cut her off, his voice firm and unwavering. "Ma'am, are you aware that discriminating against service animals is a federal crime, regardless of the owner's position, regardless of your so-called community standards?" I closed my door, shutting out the noise, the chaos, the relentless media scrutiny. I sat down heavily next to Max, my loyal companion, my furry friend. My phone kept buzzing, a constant barrage of calls from major networks, from other members of Congress, from disability rights organizations, a testament to the national outrage sparked by their cruelty. Tomorrow, I'd deal with it all. Tomorrow, I'd start turning this nightmare, this personal tragedy, into real, lasting change, into legislation that would protect others from the abuses of power I'd endured. But tonight, watching through my window as karma, swift and merciless, did its work, I held Max close, my hand gently stroking his fur, and whispered, "We got them, buddy. We finally got them." Outside, another news van pulled up, its satellite dish reaching towards the sky, and I couldn't help but wonder how many other HOAs across America, how many other petty tyrants hiding behind the guise of community standards were about to face their own day of reckoning, their own moment of truth. The doctor said Max might never walk the same way again, that his gait might be permanently altered, but they didn't know my dog's spirit, his unwavering resilience. I watched him, my heart swelling with pride and love, take his first shaky, hesitant steps in our living room, his golden fur still patchy from the surgery, the scars a permanent reminder of the violence he'd endured. The news vans outside had finally left, their insatiable hunger for drama temporarily sated, but the damage to Oak Haven Estates, to their carefully constructed facade of perfection, was permanent, irreparable. Every time Max flinched at a loud noise, a sudden movement, my heart broke all over again, a fresh wave of anger washing over me. Catherine Martin's perfect world, the world she'd so fiercely defended, was crumbling, disintegrating around her. I heard she had tried to sell her house, to escape the consequences of her actions, but nobody wanted to buy from the woman who had helped shoot a congressman's service dog, the woman who had become a national symbol of HOA abuse. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, a constant stream of messages from other representatives and senators expressing their support, their outrage, asking about Max, offering their assistance. The story had struck a nerve, resonating across the country, a stark reminder of the vulnerability of those who rely on service animals, the constant threat of discrimination they face. Last week, I caught Catherine trying to sneak into my backyard with her phone, probably looking for anything to complain about, some new fabricated violation to report. But this time, I was ready. The upgraded security cameras I'd installed, my silent, ever-vigilant guardians, caught everything, including her pathetic attempt to plant fake evidence of dog waste, a desperate, transparent attempt at retaliation. The police, alerted to her continued harassment, weren't as friendly to her this time, their patience worn thin by her relentless campaign of lies and deceit. Brenda, our former HOA president, the woman who had ruled Oak Haven Estates with an iron fist, sent me a letter, a handwritten plea for forgiveness, begging to meet, to explain everything, to somehow make it right. I read her letter twice, carefully considering her words before letting Max use it as a chew toy, a small, symbolic act of defiance. Their fake apologies, their belated attempts at remorse, meant nothing. I had uncovered years of their dirty work, their systematic campaign of harassment and discrimination, a pattern of abuse that could no longer be ignored. Other homeowners, emboldened by my actions, by the national attention the case had garnered, started coming forward, sharing their own stories, their own experiences of how Brenda and Catherine had targeted elderly residents, single parents, and minorities with made-up violations, with fines and threats, all in the name of maintaining their precious community standards. The media, hungry for more details, dug deeper into our HOA's history, uncovering a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. They found recordings of board meetings where Catherine bragged about forcing a young widow to sell her house because her crying baby was deemed a nuisance, a blatant violation of basic human decency. Brenda had written emails, arrogant and unapologetic, about keeping certain people out of the neighborhood, to protect our values, their own words becoming their worst enemy, a testament to their prejudice and bigotry. My team discovered that Tom, Brenda's husband, the man who had shot Max, had been lying about his security credentials for years. He had never had a license to carry a firearm as the HOA's self-proclaimed security coordinator, a blatant violation of the law. The police, armed with this new information, were very interested in that detail, adding another layer of charges to his already mounting legal troubles. Max's physical therapy sessions became the highlight of our weeks, a testament to his resilience, his unwavering spirit. Other dog owners in the neighborhood, those who had previously been silent, intimidated by the HOA's power, would stop by with treats and words of support, a sign of the changing tide, the growing sense of community. Even Mrs. Jackson, who used to complain about every little thing, every minor infraction, brought over homemade dog biscuits, a gesture of kindness, of solidarity. The community was healing, slowly but surely, but not everyone was happy about it. Not everyone was ready to embrace change. Catherine, ever defiant, tried starting a counter-campaign on social media, a desperate attempt to portray herself as the real victim, the one who had been wronged. She posted edited videos of Max barking, carefully curated clips designed to paint him as aggressive, dangerous. But my security footage, the unedited, undeniable truth, showed her deliberately agitating him through the fence, provoking him, a clear pattern of harassment. Her followers, those who had blindly supported her, dropped faster than the neighborhood's plummeting property values, their faith in her shattered by the overwhelming evidence of her cruelty. The most surprising, the most unexpected support came from Catherine's own teenage daughter, Emily. She visited one afternoon, tears streaming down her face, to apologize for her mother's behavior, for the pain and suffering she had caused. She revealed that she had been secretly recording Catherine's HOA meetings for months, disgusted by how they treated people, by their blatant disregard for basic human decency. Emily's evidence, her courageous act of defiance, became crucial for the federal investigation, a key piece in the puzzle of their downfall. Last night, I watched Max play with the neighbor's kids for the first time since the shooting, since that horrific morning that had changed everything. He still limped, a permanent reminder of the violence he'd endured, but his tail wagged with unrestrained joy, his spirit unbroken. A reporter, one of the many who had been camped outside our house, asked me if I would consider dropping the charges if Brenda and Catherine issued a public apology, a genuine expression of remorse. I looked at Max, my loyal companion, remembered the blood staining his fur, the terror in his eyes, the agonizing nights of pain and recovery. Some things, I realized, can't be fixed with a simple sorry. Some wounds run too deep, some betrayals are too profound. The old HOA board's office, once a symbol of their power and control, was empty now. Their precious rule books, their meticulously crafted regulations, gathering dust, relics of a bygone era. The interim resident council, elected in a landslide victory for reform, had uncovered even more damning evidence. Documents showing how Brenda and Catherine had been funneling HOA fees, residents' hard-earned money, into their personal accounts for years, a blatant act of embezzlement. They thought they were untouchable, invincible, in their perfect little kingdom, their gated community of privilege and prejudice. They never expected a congressman, a quiet, unassuming figure, and his three-legged dog, his loyal service animal, to bring it all crashing down, to expose their corruption and cruelty to the world. Tomorrow, Max has another vet checkup, another step in his long, arduous road to recovery. His progress is slow but steady, a testament to his unwavering spirit, his resilience. He's teaching me something new every day about courage, about forgiveness, about the enduring power of love and loyalty. As I sit on my porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, a breathtaking display of natural beauty, I see Catherine packing boxes into her car. Her house finally sold at half her original asking price. A fire sale driven by the relentless tide of public opinion. Sometimes I think karma, that elusive force of cosmic justice, has a way of making things right, of balancing the scales. But as I look at the certified letter on my desk, a formal legal document from Catherine's lawyer, a last-ditch attempt at intimidation, I wonder if this fight is truly over, if their reign of terror has truly ended. Or if Catherine, in her desperation, has one last, desperate move planned, one final act of defiance. This story highlights the importance of standing up for what's right. Even when facing seemingly insurmountable odds, it demonstrates that even seemingly small acts of cruelty and discrimination can have far-reaching consequences, and that one person with courage and determination can make a difference. It also underscores the vital role of service animals and the need to protect the rights of individuals with disabilities. Finally, it serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of holding those in positions of authority accountable for their actions. Have you ever experienced HOA abuse or witnessed discrimination against service animals? Share your stories in the comments below. Let's create a community of support and advocacy. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories that inspire and empower. Your voice matters.